Hello, hello, my dear Kardec Radio friends. Welcome, everyone. It is a great pleasure to be here with all of you guys one more time. For those of you who don't know, my name is Marco. I'm talking to you from here from Canada. Uh, and we're going through the 19th day of our series on Illuminated Prayers. Yes, dear friends, this is the 19th day that we're talking about prayers, Illuminated Prayers, and we're going through now books of through of André Luiz to the mediumship of Chico Xavier, and we're gonna discuss again incredible. Hello, Simone. Nice to have you here. I see a lot of friends coming in. Very nice to see all of you. And it's going to be this incredible journey we're going through, talking about all this, the prayers contained in these books. Okay, so before we start, let's go back to the gospel just for a quick second so we can prepare ourselves for this opportunity of learning. Okay, so I'm going to read to you on chapter number 27 in the Gospel According to Spiritism by Allan Kardec. Remember, we're celebrating 150 years, Kardec, remember that. So how about we actually talk about the joy of prayer. That's the name of this small section of the gospel. Here's what it says. This is the instructions of the spirits. The spirits are going to say, "Come, you who wish to believe, the heavenly spirits make haste to proclaim great things to you. God, my children, open his treasures to distribute their benefits to you. Oh, disbelievers, if you only knew how good for the heart faith is, and how it leads the soul to repentance and prayer. Prayer, how touching are the words that leave the lips at a time when prays. Prayer, and listen carefully, prayer is a divine mist that destroys the highest heat of the passions." My dear friends, think about. Hello, Saul. Hey, Matthew. Welcome, everyone. So listen, think about this. Very, very hot day. You're feeling horrible. It's just too much heat. You're starting to feeling, you're not feeling well. All of a sudden, a mist breaks that heat, touches your skin, makes you feel so good, right? That's what the spirits are telling us here. Look, that's the instruction of the spirits. Prayer is a divine mist. The mist made of love, connecting all of us, destroying the highest of the passions. The firstborn daughter of faith is the prayer, right? If I have faith, I know I can connect to who's above me, right? I can connect to my creator. That's what I'm doing. So it leads us to the pathway that takes us to God. In introspection and solitude, you are with God. My dear friends, look at this. When we are praying, we are with God. No more mysteries, because he unveils himself to you. Apostles have taught, life is before you. Your soul detaches itself from matter and launches itself onto those infinite ethereal worlds that pure human beings fail to acknowledge. And with this amazing introduction from the Gospel According to Spiritism, we are starting tonight, talking about Illuminated Prayers, and we're going to continue the book Between Heaven and Earth by André Luiz. And I'm picking up from Carol that did this amazing emotional time yesterday talking about motherhood, mothers, and how this is so well represented in this particular book, and the emotional, the aspects of prayer, the love, and everything to be connected to, right? So we're going to pick up from Carol and continue on Between Heaven and Earth. And for those of you who are following us and may not remember all the details, right, about this book, which it is an incredible story, and we could probably do an entire segment just talking about prayers contained in this book. There's so many of them. Okay, there's so many of them. So do we do a little recap, okay, before we continue on. So Between Heaven and Earth, the first thing that we learn is about something called diverted prayer. And what is that? So every time we're elevated, so prayer is this impulse of thoughts driven by your own energies, right? So your will, right? Your thoughts, your vibration. So you can give it an impulse. The impulse depends on your faith, depends on, how you're vibrating, what you're thinking, what you're doing, right? So all those things will influence on the impulse that you give to this current of thoughts that you project during your prayer. So, my dear friends, when you project these thoughts, and let's say in this case of this book, for example, the prayer is directed towards someone that cannot help, right? Because the prayer in this particular case is by Evelina, a 14-year-old girl, which is praying to help her family, but she's praying to Odila, her mother, which is already discriminated. She's not in a condition to help. Actually, she's suffering a lot. Hello, Teresa, nice rainbows. Yes, bringing light and colors to us, right? So she's praying, but she's directing her thought, Rihanna, hello, directing her thought to Odila. Odila cannot help, right? So, but the prayer is so embedded with emotion and with the energy and the love. So there's a long history connecting this family. There's so much power to that prayer. The prayer gets diverted and reach our good friends André Luiz and his team, led by Clarencio and Hilario and everything else. So they were able to pick up on that particular projection of the prayer, right? So isn't that amazing? So that they called it diverted prayer. And thank God our prayers are normally diverted, and we can always find help. Because we know, right? Sometimes we pray and we pray for this and that. We ask for this, we ask for that. We can elevate our thoughts to the Creator, right? That's the easiest way to do it, because then we can't be wrong, right? But obviously, along the way, when our production of thoughts, it will reach someone who will help us, right? It could be our guardian angel, it could be a familiar spirit, it could be a spirit, a mentor in a spiritual city like Clarencio, and it can go higher and higher and higher. It could be reaching people that work under the guidance of certain spirits, for example, that are elevated spirits. So, in other words, there are many, there's a network of help around. So, what means is that, don't worry, you shouldn't be thinking about this. When you're praying, think about your thoughts. Remember, we talked about this, right? So what are you thinking, right? So what is the impulse you're giving? Are you really asking? Do you really believe in that, right? Is your faith the size of a little mustard seed? Is that what you're? So can you at least project that faith? Can you think with a lot of power? Right? So that is the energy that you need to project it out there. I like to think about this, and I like to bring this example, right? So I like to think about this as you're, let's say, in your very crowded place, everyone is talking at the same time, like this background noise, no one hears each other, right? I'm trying to talk to someone just close to me. What can you do to help that situation, right? You can't get out of it. So how you do it, you project your voice, right? So try to be heard. If you think about it, like when you're thinking about your thoughts and to the surrounding, obviously you have to think about how you project it, what you're thinking, and what you're directing it to, right? And that's one of the big messages that we're going to learn from this book, Between Heaven and Earth. And obviously, yes, you probably got the idea right now, the entire book is revolving around a family, that the family is composed of, the main characters. I don't want to give up too much of the story, but the main characters are Evelina, which presents in the beginning with prayer, a very emotional, very, very powerful prayer, and Amaro and Odila, parents of Evelina, and then this surrounding network of individuals that are directly connected to that family, right? Now, incarnate and discarnate worldwide, because we know that, okay? Now, when we started reading the book, right, Emmanuel is going to write this as a preface of the book, and this is what he's going to say. These are the themes of the book, okay? So if you guys follow it, right? So first one he brings is the afflicted heart in prayer, right? In this case, is a prayer by Evelina. But it can also represent every single one of us, right? Because that's what we do, right? When we're afflicted hearts and we need some support and we need some help, we are a heart that is in a moment of prayer, right? So we're talking about that particular topic in this book, okay? So what else are we talking? So Emmanuel is going to tell us that we're going to talk about the mind paralyzed in illusion and suffering. So the question is, Marco, do we live sometimes with mind paralyzed? Yes, we do, more often than we think, right? So our minds, which are in essence we as spirits, right? And we're really this time point in history and existence, our freedom really only exerted completely by our thoughts, right? That's another story. We're going to talk about freedom in another time. But we're free to think, right? It's hard to control it, right? Because it shows exactly who you are, right? So when you have this kind of funny thought, and the thought might be not very good thought, so think about it, reflect, try to know yourself. Why are you thinking that, right? Anyways, so the mind sometimes can get focused so much on those thoughts that it becomes paralyzed, right? I'll give an example. I gave an example a few days ago. Sometimes we have problems with our neighbors, and we have problems, at work, right? Or with other people, or you're driving, someone says something to you, get really, really, really upset, because I think that's one of the most stressful situations all around, like when you're driving in the heavy traffic, and things can get quite chaotic sometimes, right? So in those moments, sometimes the energy that we generate by, being aggressive or angry with someone, or replying to offenses and stuff, that energy can have a little cycle, right? So we think about it, and we think about consequences and why that happened, and what happened because this, so I'm right, he's wrong, and we go through that cycle. That moment, your mind is paralyzed, right? So I'm giving you a very superficial example, because now let's think about we as spirits. How many times we came back to deal with problems that maybe something we've done or something that happened, and now we have to fix it. So how many times? Think about the complex network out there. Now think about those issues, those thoughts in your mind, and how they can actually paralyze you, right? And we have examples from Andrea Luiz too, telling situations where spirits are so paralyzed, or they're so stuck into a cyclic thought that it can get, they discarnate, they keep sleeping, right? Or they keep paralyzed completely because they can't get rid of that easily from that locked up mind, basically, right? So Andrea Luiz is going to talk about it too in this book, right? So the home inundated with trials, yes. So when we come into a home with our families, there are trials involved. There are spirits that we need to bring together so we can help each other, and we can go over corrections of things that happened in the past, right? The pathway to beset the struggles, right? So the pathways for us to deal with that. The madness of jealousy. Yes. And it's, listen to the word, the madness, right? Madness of jealousy. And we know, hello, Teresa. Yes. Reason why meditation silences the mind is important to avoid paralysis. Yes. So knowing yourself, understanding what, who you are, what you're thinking, right? Reflect on your thoughts, and obviously starting the motion towards changing, right? We need to do that. Okay, there are many tools to do it, but we've learned from the master a very important way to do it, which is putting love in action, what we call charity to all. Remember, benevolence, right? Remember, we talked about this at the very beginning. So benevolence towards all, right? Charity, respect, and that's, we know the recipe, right? We need to start putting practice. So it is very important in this example here, the jealousy, because this whole story is also based One of the key problems of the story that needs to be untangled is jealousy between two individuals, incarnate and discarnate, that creates a current that connects those minds, not in a good way, connect in a more destructive way. You know, as we know, it's an obsession, right? That can occur. So you see, our minds can get connected, right? Can be connected in a very positive way, or sometimes connected in a very negative way, a deleterious situation for everyone involved, okay? And then the book, according to the preface by Emmanuel, the book talks about clashes of thought and conflicts of emotion. So it is a very, very interesting story that we're going to talk about. So Clarencio, in the first chapter of the book, is going to summarize prayer to us. And I want to read that because I think it's very important for us to get the sense of the role of Clarencio, right? And there's explaining to André Luiz, but in a way, through his explanation, to André Luiz, is actually explaining to us too, right? Because that's how we learn in these books, right? So Clarencio is going to say this. So every prayer, just like any other emission of power, right? So when you're emitting any type of waves or sounds, or, you know, the thought that's another type of power that we emit, right? So the prayer is just that. Is characterized by a certain frequency. Remember when you put your little radio on, right? That's a great example. A lot of people use it. I think it's perfect, right? You put your radio on, you connect to a specific frequency from the station that's emitting that power far, far, far away. If you connect right at that specific wavelength, frequency, right? You can hear it, right? So prayer is exactly the same thing. It has a very specific frequency. And we are all surrounded by intelligences that are capable of tuning in into our appeal, right? To the receiving station. So we are little stations, right? When we're doing the prayer. Okay, that's exactly what's happening. And then he continues. So we know that in the infinite worlds of the cosmic grandeur, so in the entire creation, right, universal humanity is comprised of God's creatures at various ages and various situations, right? In the spirit realm, we too must be mindful of the principles, right? To the degree that it perfects and sanctifies itself. Each concept acquires more and more Heavenly Father qualities, right? And then he keeps going. The higher the percentage of such qualities in the spirit, the greater the ability to cooperate in carrying out the divine plan, responding to the requests on behalf of God, right? So there are many spirits out there that respond to our requests, right? You know, as co-creators, as workers, right, with us, okay? And this is all bound by infinite love and infinite wisdom, right? That's God, okay? So that's what. Hello, Carol. See, happy little prayers there. Thank you. Yes, you're so beautiful. Yeah, it was really good. Thank you so much, Carol. Yeah. So let's continue on. So the journey today. Remember, we talked a lot about the book. As I explained to you, Evelina is praying. So the prayer is being now heard because of the tuning frequency. And I asked you, which frequency are you tuning in or you're projecting? That's the key. So you have to look, all of us have to look inside, think about this. Where are we connecting? We are emitting power, and I hope that power is in the right frequency, right? We have to tune it. We have to connect it to the right place, right? And then the prayers to her mother, but then because she didn't have the conditions to help, right? Because Odila was with jealousy, right? With the current family, Zomira, which is the current mother, the current wife of Amaro. So that brings together an entire network of help that's going to untangle every single one of those characters and go through each one until the entire family will continue this pathway, this journey that they set up to do, right, during the incarnation. Okay. So now, tonight we're going to talk about chapter number 28. So what is chapter 20? So chapter 28 is going to talk about one of the key characters of this book. It's called Giulio. And I'll open a little parenthesis here because I need to talk about Giulio. Very important. Okay. So Giulio is the son of Amaro and Odila, right? And at a very young age, he wanders on the ocean and the beach under the care of Zamira, and he drowns, right? And the book brings that in a very interesting way because it brings to us the spiritual perspective of Giulio. Giulio committed suicide twice in the book. And in one of the previous times, because of the mechanism that he committed the suicide, right? He tried to kill himself by poisoning. Poisoning caused damage to his physical body. Not only that, the energy, which is certainly not a good energy, remember the vibration, the frequencies, right? So not a good energy, that directly affect the perispiritual body in the region of the glottis, which will be the throat, okay? So that caused a damage to the perispiritual body, right? Because of the self-inflicted act, right, against his own existence, right? So when Giulio now discarnates, so he discarnates by drowning now, and then he goes to the spiritual world, he has a lot of issues that are demonstrated, manifested in his very spirit. One of those are lesions around the area of the glottis, right? Because of the previous suicide. So everyone is tender to him, right? So we have a team of people helping him. Blantina, Sister Clara, Clarice, all of them in the spiritual world, they're trying with passes, with prayer, and doing everything they can do to help Giulio heal. But remember, the law is perfect. Do you guys remember that, right? So let's focus that. And if we put that in our minds and we never forget this, that's a great thing we're going to do, okay? Because that's key. That is essential, right? For us to understand God, right? Law is perfect. It's just, right? So because he inflicted that trauma himself, right? Although you can help, right? You can alleviate some of that suffering. Eventually, he has to change it. How do you change something negative? By doing a very positive thing. Remember, it's like math. So he has to be prepared to come back to heal that. And how is going to get rid of that energy that he accumulated in that area that's causing the damage to perispirit? By having a new body. So the new body that he's going to use temporarily again for that time is going to be very important, because through the body you're going to be able to remove some of that energy. He's going to come back with a disease in this area, right? So that brings a big window for us, right? Because now we can look in through that window and think about some of our own afflictions, some of our own trials, right? Why did it happen to me? Why do I have this? Why do I have that? There's always a reason. Nothing happens by chance. I can guarantee you that, right? Because I know God. Well, I know exactly the description, right? I know I can't. We know we cannot define a figure or define it perfectly, but we know the attributes of God. And one of the attributes of God is He's all-powerful and He's perfect and He's loving, and that's enough. If I know that, I know that there's always a reason for things to happen, right? And through the example of Giulio, André Luiz gives us a big window of understanding the mechanism of disease that is coming from the perispiritual body, purging through the physical body the same energies that I generated in the past through my own vices, my own errors, or in this case, suicide. Okay, so he had to come back. So in this chapter, I know, so isn't it? Yes, it's an incredible family story. I totally agree with you. And we go over, and then there's, oh, I can't tell you much because I want everyone that didn't have a chance to read to go through this. but it's just an incredible story. Yeah. So now in chapter 28, Julius is preparing to return. So Julius just discriminated. Now he spent some time in the spiritual world in recovery. Now he's ready to come back, right? So the wounds are still there in perispirit, and then his body will be modified because of the influence of that energy, that those wounds will be manifesting through his physical body. So here's what Clarencio has to say about the problem is very serious. That's what Clarencio says. Yet quite simple. True, right? It is action and reaction. It's a quite simple process, quite serious though. It will entail only a brief but necessary trial. So Julia will have the troubling desire to remain on Earth. Remember, he for 2 times now committed suicide. So now he has to learn to stay. He has to develop into himself this will to, well, I want my life, right? He said no to it twice. How you learn? You learn through understanding the importance and the preciousness of the gift of life, okay, of the incarnation. So he will remain on Earth with a loan, oh, this is interesting, a loan of a physical body, right? So he use it temporarily. However, since he has committed suicide twice, he'll have to experience an early death twice in order to more securely value the blessing of life, right? That opens another big window. So why do sometimes the young kids, eventually, unfortunately, discarnate at very tender age, very young age? There's always a reason. Remember that? God is perfect. Okay, never forget that. After spending several years in the lower regions of our plane, and that's Clarencio explaining, during which Julio, futilely yielded to rebelliousness and idleness. That sounds a lot like us when we're frustrated, right? Rebellion against the law, right? And idleness because, well, I don't think I can do anything, right? I'll just sit down here. So it sounds a lot like all of us, right? He paid for having drowned himself. Okay, so that is already covered. So this time he will have to deal with the results of having poisoned himself. Now, see, this is from the previous one, right? And this is all very regrettable, he said. Of course it is. Now we're going to go in through the moment of the incarnatory process, the very first connection of the Julio returning to Zulmira as a mother. And for all the mothers out there, we celebrated Mother's Day, right? This is, if you have a chance to read this, please do. It is just an incredible, beautiful description of the power of love, connecting the spirits together, allowing them to prepare for this journey where the mother will bring the spirit who needs this particular experience back. And she knows it. Yes, mamas, you all know. Before the incarnation occurs, they had meetings. They had a chance to discuss. They knew they were going to come and they will actually eventually lose their lives in attendance in an early age. They know they had to suffer. And she said, yes, that is true love. Mamas, that is true love, right? Because she's not here praying like, please God, give me this baby with this way and that way, and I want this way, this hair, this style, this behavior, this. No, she's saying yes to a spirit in need. It's going to come as a baby, but remember, you don't give birth to baby only. It's an adult spirit. It's just like a little package that looks great, right? But eventually, there's a history there. She said yes to that history. And the love that she demonstrated wiped a lot of that energy that was surrounding their family, right? Beautiful, beautiful story. Mamas are really this angels of life that help to co-create our existences. This is just splendid. Like I'm gonna start with my tears again, like yesterday with Carol, right, Carol? I remember that. I know I love the heart. I'm not going to do that too. Okay. So in the moment of incarnation, so now Julio is being brought, and he's sick. He's going through a hard time. Remember this. He's feeling the consequences of his own actions, but visually speaking, he's not in a good shape. So he's coming back, right? So Sister Clara, Blandina, all the characters, Hilario, André Luiz, are taking Julio to his new home. And Zulmira, now partially separated from her body, will receive him. Think about this. The joy of actually seeing the moment where your son is being connected to you. I can't even describe that. That is just incredible. So he extended, this is the description, extended her kindly hands to us, right, radiant with joy, and received Julian, held him really, really tight, right? She looked like, and that's the description of the book, she looks sublimated Madonna, hallowed by victorious motherhood. This is incredible, okay? So, yes, isn't it? God is love. Oh, yes, it's so beautiful. And now that we have all the background needed to go into the story, now we're going to hear the prayer, right? Because we're talking about illuminated prayers. And the prayers now is by Claudius, right? So this is the prayer of the moment of incarnation. That's what we're doing. So let's read what Claudius is bringing to us in chapter 28, okay? So bless us, Lord, souls entwined in the hope of your infinite love and in the joy that comes from obedience to your will. We are here accompanying a friend who has returned for recapitulation, right? He needs another chance to go back and redo what happened in the past, right? Give him strength to submit in resignation to the cross that will be his salvation. Oh, going back to one of the images, right, of Jesus supporting that moment in the physical body, that we all look at it. We all look at it, at least at some point. Maybe now we're able to go over that, but we all look at that as suffering. He looks at it as, I'm helping these people. Was he suffering as a spirit? No, he was praying for us, right? Look at perspectives, right? These are perspectives, right? And every time we look at the cross, at that symbol, that we look at the body of Jesus in the cross, we still, in the back of our minds, think about suffering. In reality, he's teaching us love. Doesn't matter what you do with my body, right? I'm here asking God to forgive you, right? That's what he's saying. So that's why we look at the cross, right? But then Claudius, incredibly, he uses that the same way, right? So the cross, that means the salvation. So he's going to go through the suffering of having a problem with his glottis, his throat. But that is not suffering. That is a chance that he has to correct in a very relatively quick way, right? Because in one incarnation, he's going to have a chance to correct what he's done, the poisoning, okay? So, and then he continues, "Oh, Father, uphold us as we travel the great redemptive road, on which problems and pain must act as our guides, not because we need it, because we, through our own free will, eventually decided to go through this pathway," right? Strengthen, he continues, strengthen our courage and serenity. Moderate our hearts so that we may serve you in any circumstances. Most of all, Lord, we ask you to help our sister who has invested sacred feminine aspirations in the maternal apostolate. It's like an apostle, right? Look at the comparison. So as a mother, right, she's putting into practice the word that we learn from Jesus. So as apostles, You were promoting the love. So mothers are that, right? It's promoting the love through that moment where you accept to help someone in need, right? Or to bring someone that needs to be here for any reason, right? Maybe to help you back, or we don't know. It is a very complex possibilities, right? There's so many possibilities that even Allan Kardec in the basic books would tell us, don't waste too much time trying to figure out what happened in the past and what happens now. If you just focus on the now and you move forward with the love, and putting to practice things you learn, you do really well. Okay, so let's continue exactly like we learned. Right? Sanctify, and then Clarencia continues, sanctify her longings and strengthen her energies so that she may honor herself with you in the divine endeavor of creation. Yes, we are co-creators, right? And she is participating actively in the creation by allowing a chance for the spirit to come and correct what happened in the past, right? And that's the prayer. Okay, beautiful prayer support for that moment. Now, yeah, exactly, Carol. Any circumstances, right? And we talked about this over and over in pretty much all the books we've been discussing, is that, it doesn't matter which situation you are, you always have a chance to serve and to help. Even if you think you're like at the very deep end, like you hit rock bottom, you can't get out of there, there's always going to be someone there that needs you, us, right? And the beautiful thing of life is we were there before. We were the ones that needed that hand. We still need it, right? And now sometimes what happens is we have a chance to be the person to give the hand, right? That is exactly the divine endeavor of creation. Okay. And then what happened with the prayer? And then we're going to see the effects. And that's something important, because this particular book, allows us to see the direct effect of what happened. So Zumira, which is the mother at that time, was touched. So everyone was touched by the prayer. Then you can possibly imagine why. But she was touched even more deeply. That's descriptions of Clarencio or Andrea Luis, right, in the book. So attracted by the magnetic power of the prayer, she approached Clarencio with the boy and knelt down. So she knees down now with the boy now. And then what happens? It juxtaposes itself on the delicate tissues of the mother. So now the boy, Julio, is now part of her body. It's connected. So the perispirits are so closely, intricately connected. Think about this. Physically they are, we know that. We learned that in biology, so we don't need to go there. The placenta connects the blood, goes around, there's exchange of things, and we're not talking about that now. But perispiritually, because we're looking at the perispirit bodies, right, of those two spirits, the description here, they're now juxtaposed and they're part of one. And the incarnating spirit Julio starts to shrink in size, and they see it, and Luis describes it as one of the first times he describes that in the collection of books, right? How it shrinks down so it fits perfectly in the mother. So they're connected, and they'll be going around and around for a while, right? For 9 months, they're going to be right. And interesting to think about this, because as we know, so yes, this book, I know, so isn't it? It's such a beautiful story, yes. And I think, if we're talking about this one little chapter, one moment of the book, but if we look through the familial relationships that are described in the book and how one thing influences the other and this, it really makes us think. And I agree with you, it touched me tremendously too. And I'm going to say that for every book, so excuse me, I'm very biased, okay? But it does give you this interesting perspective on your spiritual family, right? Which is far, far, far more complex and larger than the one we live right now. And not only that, it teaches us that we can't really run from, what we have to do. We can't. We may run a little bit and kind of keep it to the side just to delay things, because eventually, and I'll go back to this, God is perfect. Remember that? We talked about this. God is perfect. The law is just and perfect. So there's no way, right? We have to perfect ourselves. And we'll do it sometimes. We'll catch up to it, right? And the book tells us a lot about that too, right? So beautiful. I know. It's just a beautiful story. Okay? So the prayer was able to give enough magnetic fluidic energy. So Mira, obviously, when she plugs into that station, she also vibrates the same way. So that's why when we're praying together, we feel it. Isn't that amazing? Because all our thoughts are tuned in the same station. Okay? So if we are vibrating high, we are all elevating our thoughts directly to the high. The same vibration gives it more power, right? And when the prayer is directed to someone specifically, that person will notice. So how many examples we have in the spiritual world of spirits that are sometimes suffering, they're going through their own umbrals and going through their own challenges, how they feel touched, and they actually see, they can feel someone praying for them incarnated. And at the same token, in the other, if you flip it around, spirits will be very, very sad when they feel they're abandoned, right? By their spiritual family members who are incarnated. So let's pray, right? Pray for help, support, right? It's so important. Prayer is an act of love. We talked about this in the very first day of the Illuminated Prayers, right? And we have to do it, okay? So let's see what else. So let's continue on the Clarence's explanation now. So after the bodies juxtaposed itself, the delicate tissues got together, the boy's own body gradually shrank before our eyes. And that's what Andrea Louise describes, right? Because it has to connect to a little tiny body of a baby, right? So remember, the perispirit is connected to the physical body in a cell-by-cell connection, right? It's a very, very complex connection. So every little bit of the body is directly connected with the perispirit. So it has to adapt. And the good thing is that the perispirit can adapt quite easily in this scenario. So because it doesn't have a particular shape and form, those are directed by the thoughts. So you can adapt, right, to any scenario. Okay, that's what happened there. So in the end of this chapter, Clarencio is going to talk again about motherhood. So we already know that, we already learned from this chapter that the blessing of motherhood, like giving earthly life, right? And the importance of the part of the co-creation, right? The apostolate of motherhood. Everything we discussed is just so beautiful. And then Clarencio is going to finish and summarize this. And you can take note of this, because I think this is, I can't find more direct, beautiful words to describe this, right? So here's what Clarencio is going to say about the maternal womb, right? So the mother, okay? Our mentor finished his thoughts. So Clarencio finished his thoughts saying this. So the motherhood, the maternal womb, is an anemic vessel of strong magnetic power, of a living mode, right? When you're doing a little mode, because you want to create something, you draw that, what you want to create, and then you mold it, you shape it. So that's what he describes. So it is a living mode, meant for casting and recasting forms, different forms, under the creative breath of God. So if you can't find a better example of co-creation, I'll tell you this. This is the one, okay? Because as in motherhood, you are shaping this spirit to existence again, and shaping, recasting, casting it again, using your own physical body, right? under the guidance of God, right? Which in every part offers us resources for our evolution towards wisdom and love. So this vessel, right, attracts the soul that is eager to rebirth. So they're connected, right? It attracts it, right? And that is attuned to it, reproducing its dense body in time and space, just as the soil engulfs the seed, enable it to germinate in keeping with the principles that enclose it. Motherhood is a sacred spiritual service in which the soul spends centuries perfecting the qualities of the sentiments, right? My dear friends, this is really the summary of tonight, okay? So we're seeing in live description by Andrea Luis, because he's there looking at the scene and telling us what he's seeing. In live description, what's happened in that beautiful moment where Julio, a spirit that is suffering, that needs to come back and correct his two actually suicides, not attempted suicides. And now he's having a chance through love of a mother, that knowing exactly what she's going to be helping, who and why, and knowing the challenges, knowing that, you know, the spirit will have a very short life in this particular incarnation. She accepts it, and that acceptance generates this magnetic energy that will attract Julio as an infant who is suffering through her, and through that she will help heal a multitude of sins. That is love in action, my friends. That's exactly what it is, right? And the prayer here, in the end, is a backdrop, right, to this entire story. And the prayer is a prayer for that incarnating spirit. Okay, my dear friends? So that's what we had to discuss today. And thank you for this opportunity again to having this, you know, very nice conversation about Illuminated Prayers. This one in particular, very touching, perfectly timed, right? Talking about motherhood. And this entire book, quite frankly, is about that. And I'm not going to tell you at the end what happens, or maybe we will, right, Carol? I think we're going to get to the end of the book at some point, or we'll have to tell you. But the end is a blessing. It's beautiful, and you see why. And that's why we have to celebrate, because God is perfect, okay? And every time we look at ourselves, we look at someone and a story, or an imagery, that we only look at the suffering through our tiny little eyes that we have. So our eyes are closed off like this. So we can only see things like very shallow. We don't look at deep. We cannot understand. So we're very quick at judging, right? So our eyes are trained for that. But sometimes we don't see what's in the behind of things, right? And very often when we see a situation where you see ultimate suffering, right? What happens there is that you see ultimate love, chances for redemption. Because if you go back to that same, if we have a chance to use the little same eyes here, right? In the next incarnation, or the next 1 or 3 from now, you see a happy spirit that was able to go through that, right? And conquer it, and be victorious in their pathway to evolution. That's who we are, right? So let's thank God for that, right? Let's thank God for that. Okay. Carol, yes. Thank you so much, Carol. Yes. Don't make me cry again tomorrow, okay? I'm going to ask you that, right? So, Daisy, yes, it's a beautiful story, right? What can we do? So, everyone. So, thank you, all of you, very much, right, for being with us here tonight. We're going to go back to the same book tomorrow with Carol. Beautiful. And then after that, we'll pick up after that and continue this conversations, okay? May God bless us always, okay? And have a great night.